is be true to what you said on paper.
I wish that I could freely dream and be.
Well, good morning. Welcome back to At the Round Table with Manley. I'm your host, Larry Ellison, and in studio, folks, yes, in studio, with my brother from another who running with his pants on fire, Dr. Bradley. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. It's nice to be here, man. It's a cold morning. I didn't realize that we had snow. I've been in the house all weekend. And second of all, this holiday threw me off. For some reason, I'm thinking it's Friday morning.
Listen, I had that same effect this week, but as they said, Dr. Bradley, we're not in Kansas anymore.
Yeah, I got that right.
As they said with the Wizard of Oz, no, it is a little nippy out there.
It's nippy out there, man. I got up this morning. I was like, whoa, I got to clean off the car. I haven't done that in a while.
You know, it's funny because earlier in the week, it was, in the 50s. It felt like
decent, yeah.
It felt like a heat wave, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, oh, spring is coming. And,
well, yeah.
I don't know what they say about this global warming, because in some places in the country, it's
completely unpredictable.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
True.
Because when we were kids, it was obvious. You
know
what I mean?
Right.
You're gonna have a significant amount of snow this time of year.
Yeah.
Now you don't know what you're gonna get.
No, I mean they said we've had more 50+ degrees this month of January than we've had in quite some time.
Really?
Yeah. This is abnormal for us to be this warm, even on any days of hitting 50 degrees.
Wow.
And I'm a little jealous because my brother Derek, he is left Thursday to go to Hawaii.
Go to Hawaii?
Yeah.
Man, it must be nice living high off the hog, huh?
Well, it is, but I tell him, he and his wife went their honeymoon. They got married last August, and so they delayed their honeymoon.
Okay.
But they have a 2-year-old.
Oh, okay.
And they took their 2-year-old with them.
Okay.
Which understandable. But I was telling him before he went, I said, bro, that's a 12-hour flight.
It's a long one, but if you living high enough off the hog to afford first class, I mean, I took my wife there back in 2005.
Yeah, but even first class with a 2-year-old.
Oh yeah, well we didn't have a 2-year-old.
That's what I'm saying.
In fact, we left the kids.
Right. That's the part that. So I have to check with him. Plus, you have that 6-hour time difference where they're 6 hours behind. So he's a football, so he's going to be trying to navigate watching the games the next couple of days because he loves football. So we'll see.
Good luck to him on that.
Yeah, I'll check in with him. But we want to thank our sponsor, Guarantee Rate Mortgage Company. For all your mortgage needs, give branch manager Cora Holbrook a call at area code 781-342-0252. Guaranteed Mortgage is located at 75 State Street in downtown Boston, Mass. Guarantee Rate Mortgage Company, guaranteed to exceed your expectations. And I want to say good morning, Pastor Hobbs. How are you? We didn't forget you over there.
Good morning. I am well by the grace of God.
This man is operating like an octopus, man. He got his hands going in all different directions. All the tentacles going all over the place.
Well, we're going to have him one more task before we keep going, is to open us up in prayer, if you wouldn't mind.
Always.
Absolutely. Father God, we do bless you. We honor you. We reverence you. We thank you for your grace, your mercy again, for being all powerful, for being all knowing, and a constant help in the time of need. And once again, we call upon you this broadcast to bless this broadcast, all that's said and all that's done, that you're glorified in and through it, and we count this as done in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I want to say hearty good morning to Brother Jamal Crawford out there, and Brother Harry Scales, and Mrs. Scales. I want to say good morning to him, and good morning to our sister Denise Reed.
Oh, she's going to be listening to this. She's up.
Well, I'm sure she's up. Denise is an early riser. So I want to say.
For someone who says, oh, you guys get up too early.
Too early. She used to work morning. So
exactly.
She's out walking. She's probably out walking because Denise is a walker.
Oh, that's good for her.
So she would go over there near the old Columbia Point and get her walk.
Oh yeah, over there by
Harbor Point.
Harbor Point. Now it's like, okay, we'll go back. We'll get there later. But it was amazing, the transformation in that area.
Well, that's what it's. You go from Columbia Point, and then when they want to charge you more,
you go to Harbor Point
or Boulevard. We give it some fancy name.
Same spot for more money.
Exactly. And since you have more frequent flyer miles than I do, you've been traveling. We have.
I'm going to go to Indiana. Gary in particular. Say hello to my brother William Bridgeforth. Good morning to him.
I know. Good morning, Brother Bridgeforth. We haven't heard from him. Oh, there he is, like clockwork.
You haven't heard?
There he is. Good morning, brother Bridgeforth down there. Send us a little forecast. How's the weather down there? Because they get a little chilly too. I don't know if they get much snow. They might get.
No, they get
they
get
do?
hit. Oh
Okay.
yeah, they get hit, man.
All right.
You can keep that over there. I got up this morning. I was like, oh man, I'm not used to this.
Yeah.
I got kind of lazy.
Well, I have to tell you, growing up, didn't understand and appreciate, was envy people that have garages, right? And now we have a garage. I tell you, I don't know if I could, unless I lived in a warm climate, have a home without a garage.
Yeah. Well, I had one.
I know.
You know what I mean? We converted it into a den because my wife was like, well, we need the kids are getting bigger. We need more space. I'm like, man, come on. So we did that. Now I'm saying to myself, see, this morning, it was just been open the door and keep it moving.
Listen, I'm telling you, the first time, Dr. Bradley, when I really appreciated it, is when I came out and got in the car and pulled out. And I used to wonder why I would see people sometimes in their car had very little or no snow.
No snow on them.
I'm like,
exactly.
how'd they get their car so clean? It never dawned on me.
What they know that I don't know.
Exactly. They have a garage.
Exactly.
And what a difference.
A carport or something.
Oh, what a difference.
Yeah.
What a difference.
Yeah.
Again, folks, you're listening to At the Round Table with Ma'am Leo. The caller number is 617-282-0685. 617-282-0685. We're going to be getting into, the mayor is going to be having her State of the City address on Wednesday. And want to get so we want to get your take on where you think the city is on, so be her first State of the City, and the mayor ran on quite a few things on her bucket list, and what's the grade? I know we talked about it last week, but since she's going to be having her State of the City address this week, we're going to talk on some of the things that she really ran forceful on, and where they are now, and how things are working, and her administration. What is it? Has it really met the expectations and the perception that it was going to improve the quality of black and brown people here in the city? Other than, in my opinion, just some folks have jobs, but it really, in my opinion, has not really moved our situation in the economic department. So we're going to get into that. In our 8 o'clock hour, T. Michael Thomas from the People's Academy is going to be in studio.
Interesting. I saw something on television a couple of days ago, similar to a program that he's been pushing for years in the black community. It was for carpentry, and this individual who's frustrated that he could not find skilled carpenters or plumbers or electricians, so he decided to open up his own shop. And he's getting a tremendous amount of support, a white guy, all the way up to being broadcast on television. And I was like, T. Michael Thomas is doing the same thing in our community. I don't see him, or he hasn't been recognized, but I just wanted to
it's a very
I want to talk to him
good
about
observation.
That.
And that definitely, and that's what we've been talking about, is the difference in how things are getting done here. So like I said, if you have any comments or questions, like I said, the mayor's State of the City will be taking place on Wednesday. Are you going to be watching? And what are your expectations? Or has she met the goals that she said she was? And we're going to go and get into some of them. The wealth gap that still is persistent here in the city of Boston,
and it's going to continue, man. I mean, excuse me. It's difficult, and I don't, I understand that she made a lot of promises, but this situation has been in place since the beginning of this city, man.
Yeah.
And so there are ingrained disadvantages that we have as people of color. I just don't see one administration eradicating that. That doesn't mean that she can't start. That doesn't mean that she can't put together well thought out, solid public policy programs or programs backed under solid public policy to start whittling away or chopping away at those issues.
Yeah.
But to make a complete change in one administration and one office time, I don't see it.
Well, I think, Dr. Riley, what I'm seeing, like most recently this past week, she's proposing rent control here in the city of Boston, right?
Okay.
And rent is out of control here in the city of Boston.
Yeah.
But I don't know how you remedy that when you look at the cost of owning a home, right? That now, and they're saying it's not going to affect people who have 6 units or less, that it won't, but for larger units. So if you're acquiring a property today, even are larger than the 6 unit, the cost to acquire it and then maintain it almost prohibits you from charity work in some instances where you're going to be providing. The government has taxpayer money that they get, that they can go in there and if something's wrong, but you as a homeowner or the landlord and living in 2 or 3, I mean, it's not going to affect them as much. But if you have a 10 unit apartment building and you've paid market value for it, you can't afford to cut the price on the rent much.
Yeah, and you're also not factoring into your analysis, I should say, the cost of taxes. Taxes are in the city.
They're not saying they're going to give you any break on your taxes.
So I see it, and that's why I'm saying that it's going to take some long thought processes to come with a solution to resolve these issues. I think just making an order and issuing an executive order saying we're going to have rent control is not the solution.
But it's not even an executive order because she can't implement it. It has to go through the legislators to get approved. And I'm not sure if folks, like I said, looking at the cost of homes today, that is an appetite for that.
I understand the process, but where I'm going here is that it's not just going to happen through fiat. It's not going to happen through an order. It's you need to get into a process where you're thinking through this and you come up with some solid solutions to the problem. I think that ship has already sailed. You know what I mean?
Right.
You allowed
Titanic.
Exactly. You allowed the release of rent control. You didn't foresee this problem.
Well, but
come on.
To your point, and it's very good
she
point.
Didn't do it, but
that even if you freeze it at today's rate, right? Because you can't go back in the Wayback Machine. You can't say that somebody's paying $3,500 for rent now. You're going to reduce that to $2,500. You're saying you're trying to lock those prices in, but even those prices are not attainable for most people. That's why you've seen such a gentrification in flight. But that goes to our point where we're talking about building that economic wealth, right? So home ownership has been the pathway for most people, the middle class, to build up generational wealth.
Well, that might be the solution, though. But go on.
No. You're right on target. You're on top of your game as usual this morning. Is that how do you do that when the cost for homes here for people that work in making $50,000, even $100,000, and the average price for a home in Boston is $750,000 to $800,000.
Yeah, right. So the thought processes or the solutions might be how do you facilitate home ownership among those individuals who are renting. And now what happens is that you have increased your tax base. And that might be helping those individuals with better employment to get it, or it may be subsidizing, or whatever the case may be. But maybe it's not just issuing an order to say we're going to institute or reinstate rent control. Maybe it's going to be how do we work with the real estate community to now increase the home ownership in the city among people of color.
Well, I think one of the things that no mayor that I've known has tapped into is the tax breaks we give to these colleges and institutions that have endowments of billions of dollars in some cases and hundreds of millions in most.
And maybe that's your source. Maybe
huge.
Maybe that would be your financial source to assist, not requiring those individuals to
pay their fair share.
Instead of buying up communities like Lower West Roxbury, the South End, and buying up those communities, perhaps you might want to have those individuals, those institutions pay into the tax coffer and take some of that money and then start subsidizing or assisting people around home ownership.
Right.
And that would definitely address the wealth gap issue.
Right.
There's no question about that. And would also address the long-term rental issue.
Because I see all this construction going on, and a lot of this that used to be in Mission Hill area that used to be low-income housing is most of it's market now, and you see a lot of college students and professionals who are paying market rent living in there, and it's pushed out folks. Because I think what folks weren't paying a lot of attention to, Dr. Bradley, is that when this development was taking place for a lot of these housing developments, and they were moving people out because they were tearing them down, they told folks, well, if we give you a Section 8 certificate, you cannot come back. You cannot come back. And so if you don't take the Section 8 certificate, they move them around into other housing, and then they could come back. So a lot of folks, 'cause, crime was down, and they figured, okay, here's an opportunity for me to maybe get into an apartment rather than living in public housing, not knowing that it was going to get to where it is. And they didn't replace as many houses as they took out. So now probably 90% of the people that are in these public housing are market rent. They're no longer low income.
Yeah, market rent in Boston. That's a mortgage someplace else.
Yeah.
You know, wow.
It is. It's great. So, I mean, I'm not sure. So, folks, what grade do you give the mayor and her little over a year now in office as mayor? She's going to have her State of the City address this week on the housing aspect. Then, there's also the schools here in the city of Boston, right? There was a report that just came out the other day, in fact, 2 days ago, about, they had requested in a report on the schools, and because the state wasn't threatening receivership, and so they kind of gave them a little reprieve, but they brought in these folks and said, okay, what are we doing right, what are we doing wrong? One of the things they said is that they need, the report said they need an internal police force, which they had, and they dissolved, and we've seen the fallout from that. The safety in a lot of these schools it's not safe. I mean, you're seeing it, and I'm seeing it in real time, but the public is seeing the after effects of it. And that was one of the recommendations. And there's a lengthy. They haven't released the full report yet, but it's.
So do you think they're going to reinstate the police force, or we go back to that model?
Well, Dr. Bart, it's hard to get folks to admit that they were wrong, right? And I think we're probably at that stalemate.
Well, $1.3 billion, you know what I mean? I would admit that, if I'm putting up that kind of money, perhaps we want to reinstate, the police force so we can actually, get some type of return on our investment. Because you got $1.3 billion, I think their budget is.
It is, and growing.
And you have, 60,000,
no,
80,000
it's down
students?
the number is somewhere around 48 now.
48,000 students?
Yes. I know, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, that's at 48,000. The numbers keep declining because parents who can get their kids either in the charter school or in the medical system or some other...
Are getting out of there.
The ones that can navigate through. Yeah. And I feel like the ones that are stuck are parents who just don't have the means or the whereabout to get their kids out of this system. Yeah. 48,000, 1.3 billion. So you have to ask yourself, wow. I mean, just imagine if you're a country and you had a budget of $1.3 billion.
Well, some countries don't even have that
right.
gross national product. Yeah. But my thing would be, okay, so what do we do? Where do we go from here? One of the things I think we need to attack, or I would, if I were her, would be the safety in the school, because you can't begin to win, you can't begin to benefit from those investments, when you have a safety issue in the school. And maybe that does point back to returning to that internal policing model, but a lot of folks don't want to think of having police in the school because of the prison, the pipeline, so on and so forth. But I would argue that this current situation is more of a pipeline to the prison than having the police.
Well, you dropped a little Pastor Hobbs in our conversation away.
Yeah, but that's what I would argue.
I said the same thing, is that we, in law enforcement, for full disclosure, I still work for the police department here in Boston, that we, during all this reforms and the, anti-police and defund the police, we have been forced in a lot of ways to pull back from doing a lot of the intervention and prevention that we used to do, right? Because we can't have contact with kids in the way that we used to try to be helpful. In removing the school police from their role and their capacity that they were in to now calling them safety services, where they wear the polo shirts and the khaki pants, and the kids affectionately call them Jake from State Farm. We've seen over the last 2 years of not having any real adult oversight on the public safety side of it, right? We've added more social workers, right? And so social workers are not law enforcement. And law enforcement doesn't always mean someone's getting arrested.
Well, see, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking perhaps the answer is rethinking policing in the school. When we say police, we think about administering justice and apprehension and bringing into the first step is arrest and bring them into the criminal justice system. We think about the 3 levels of the criminal justice system. Perhaps in the event of policing in schools, the very first posture should be, how do we actually bring forth resources to address this issue with the kid, as opposed, it may be a situation where the behavior is so heinous and so criminal that arrests have to be effective.
Yeah.
That might be the situation, but more often than not, based on my experience, that is not the issue. The issue is a social resources are needed in that family. That
you were director of safety and climate. Was that the title?
Climate and safety.
Climate and safety in Randolph High. Was basically you were the chief law enforcement person for the safety of the school.
Yes.
I would be willing to bet that the number of arrests that you took part in or your staff took part in was very minimal. You did more diversion and intervention than anything, right? That's your last resort. But then there were certain times when it rose to the level, if somebody comes into school with a gun, that's a non-starter for negotiating.
Excuse me, you're right. There were situations where we had people walk into the school who did not belong there, chasing another kid, and wanted to do bodily harm. That individual was quickly locked up. The officers that I worked with, the Randolph PD chief at the time, Chief Pace, to select were officers that had the mindset that arrest would not be the very first option. It would be an option that if the situation warranted, it would happen.
Right.
But more often than not, it's more of a social issue that that the officers will come bring other resources to bear.
But even with that, even when the arrest took place, you still tried to work with them, fair to say, because I know we did.
Yeah.
Even through the process, through the courts, right,
Yes.
to try a little harm. But it sometimes it's at the level where you're not comfortable or you're not best suited to make the decision about them, because you can't force services that sometimes a judge can say, okay, we're going to monitor and you must comply with certain things before we let you move on. We don't have that authority, nor should we have that authority.
No, we shouldn't.
But your point is well taken, and is that without a safe environment, the learning's not going to.
It's not going to happen. So the task is, how do we create a safe environment whereby learning can happen? What you have today is not going to happen, because people they must feel safe before they can start improving themselves.
Right.
And improving themselves through education. You can't focus on the theories and the things that happen through education. Focus on getting an education when you have to worry about, I might have to beat this kid up, or he's going to beat me up, or I got to deal with a bunch. Or
even if you're the staff being assaulted.
Well, exactly. The staff and that's another whole area. So the thing is, perhaps we should bring in policing, but bring in policing on a different mindset. More of a guardian.
Right.
Than an individual who's going to be this warrior.
Right.
You know what I mean? Have that guardian mindset.
But you know what, Doctor? I can speak for Boston. I haven't seen that in my unit. That's what's so discouraging and so disheartening with this myth that we were the pipeline to prison, because the folks that I work with, every day, their task is to try to make sure that there's a safe environment, that they're working in conjunction with the schools to try to make sure that these kids and the staff are safe.
But you have to understand that you and your unit as police officers, you're fighting against those expectations and those beliefs that other people may have about policing that they got from
Minnesota, right?
Or they got from Minneapolis,
right?
Or they got from television shows. So you're fighting against those expectations. You're fighting against those beliefs about policing, and even before people actually talk to you. I have had situations when I was a director of climate and safety. They're like, "Man, you are a cop?" Yeah,
Right.
Over 2+ decades.
Right.
I was. But the point here is that maybe dealing with this child. Having an officer who's going to arrest is not what we want.
Right, but I think a lot of our politicians here saw an opportunity, and particularly the former superintendent of schools, went in search of a problem that we didn't have, looking for a solution to a problem we didn't have, as far as a pipeline of prison here in our schools. We had a lot of good programs that worked, and they were dismantled, and now we're seeing the fallout from that.
It sounds like to me that this former superintendent was well read around
from Minnesota,
well read around beliefs about prison to pipe, schools to prison pipeline.
Yeah.
Read a lot of articles, a lot of research, and say, okay, this is happening in every school.
Right, but the people who are suffering the most are the staff and the students, because
I feel bad for the teacher who want to teach and the student who
well,
wants
they're
to
having
learn.
a hard time getting that.
Yeah.
Right, they're leaving, and even the young ones are not saying, "Hey, I don't know, I can do this for 30 years." You know,
I don't blame them.
They're getting burnt out, right?
Yeah, I don't blame them.
Because it's just not worth it. You know, so again, the kids are the one and the staff that are remaining, but the biggest loser are the kids.
Well, the kids, and you haven't even tapped into the mental stress and mental wellness issues that are associated with this chronic issue that's happening in the schools.
Right.
You know what I mean? Individuals, teachers hearing about teachers being shot, although another situation, but they can pretty much say this can happen in my environment. You know, when you hear about folks being assaulted and you feel like you're stuck, you can't do anything, that in itself percolates. You know, and also create those images that cause stress in the mental arena of individuals. So you have to be careful with that. We haven't begun to talk about that yet. A lot of individuals in school probably have not put that on the table, that I need help in these areas. Where are the resources for those areas?
Right.
Anyway, I'm sorry.
No, you're no, I'm enjoying it. You're listening to At the Round Table with Man with the calling number here, 617-282-0685. 617-282-0685 is the number. You know, we're discussing, you know, the Mayor Michelle Wu is going to be having her first State of the City address on Wednesday. What's your opinion, and where do you think the state of the city is? I mean, do you think, the mayor ran on a lot of things? And like I said, I get it, politicians. I mean, it's easy to be a critic from the outside, right? Yeah. And then when you come in and you realize, sometimes you wonder why things, because it's overwhelming.
I think it's also easy for the politician to come to the various communities around the city who's going to vote, members will be voting, and put out on the table, these are the issues and this is what I'm going to do, and not have a full understanding what it takes to do that.
There you go. Right. You point out everybody's deficiencies, right? And now they become yours, and now people are saying, well, okay, like another example of that is Mass and Cass, right? Yeah. That, that was something that the mayor ran on, and that, cleaning that up, and I can tell you, if you've been down there lately, it's not cleaned up.
Well, I was, and I mentioned a couple of times on the show, Boston can't be the only municipality dealing with this issue. And I was just reading an article about an issue similar to that in Philly called Kensington Street. Where it's, based on what I'm reading, based on the pictures or photos that they took, it kind of reminds me of Mass and Cass, and how they're trying to clean that issue up. Yeah. It'd be interesting to go out and kind of tap into resources down to see what in
Seattle, we've seen in San Francisco, and in major cities,
Chicago.
Right?
So other cities are doing it. Other cities have solved the issue. So why
I don't
not
know
actually?
If they've solved it.
Well, they have. From what I understand, there are not necessarily Philly, but there's other cities who have. Atlanta is another one who have actually put in policies and practices that have seriously mitigated the problem. Reduced the problem. So what are they doing correctly?
Well, I can tell you what I see down in that area is, I guess, part of the solution is fencing it off. I don't know if you've been down there lately, but there's fencing everywhere, and then that group and that population is just delegated and isolated to a side street. So you don't see as much of the encampments on the main drag there of Southampton Street. But if you look down side street there, you see that, and you see all the security. I mean,
you're hiding the problem. So you're not resolving the problem.
That's my point.
So why not take
out of sight, out of mind? I guess.
Yeah, but out of sight, out of mind. But in these elements, it can also be a frozen body. Some places also going to be people can lose their lives because of the fact that they're not economically positioned to afford homes. So why not deal with some of the vacant properties that are in the city, and use some of those properties that are city properties to actually provide housing? Because it seems like to me that after they close down the the out in Deal Island there. What's that?
Long Island.
Long Island.
Mm-hmm.
When they closed that down,
Yeah.
then all this started to happen. So how do we bring some resource like that into the city so that people
they
can
did
actually help?
build some housing up in the state property there, some little small shack, but a lot of these folks are creatures of habits, and that some folks went up there when the weather got cold. They had little spots, but they started when the weather got warm. They started migrating. I don't think they took that into consideration. I felt they figured that these folks would just stay up that an area, but that's where they come. That's where they kind of that
That's
camaraderie.
where the stuff they need is.
And even a lot of times the drug dealers know they come down there. Like the methadone clinic is close by, and they do the place that was the hotel, the Roundhouse. The city has taken over that building, and they're housing a lot of them in there. But you put a lot of the same folks in one place. It's just a boiler.
So that hotel is no longer there. That Roundhouse.
Because who was going to stay there?
Well, how about the one across from the city hospital? Hampton. Is that still
that's still there? But you probably don't have a lot of return guests.
I wouldn't.
When people come, like a lot of the businesses down there, like I mean, who would stop there unless it was an emergency? I remember recently the Lay's potato chip guy that was down there making a delivery that was stabbed by some of the folks down there as he was just because he wouldn't give them the old potato chips that he was bringing out of the store. You didn't see that? Yeah, he was stabbed down there.
I know one of our broadcasters had his equipment.
Dan,
destroyed down there.
He's down there trying to do some good, God's work.
Yeah.
They said, "In God we trust. We'll trust you. We'll take your equipment." But this is what I'm saying is that, and this is not I just think folks should not run on solving problems that are beyond, and you don't have a full grasp. And it's easy when somebody else is sitting there and they can't solve it, and it sounds good to run on and say you have a better mousetrap, right? Well, now, guess what?
Well, I'm trying to, running for office, which I have never done, and my wife and my sisters would never allow me to do it. I put it out there, and they were like, no, that's not going to happen. But you're in a position, from what I understand, to give people your solution to social problems, not understanding the full, resistance that you're going to get that come inherited to the office or to people that are around you that want to see that social problem exist.
And you hit it right on the head. Is exactly right. Is that you can offer services to people. It doesn't mean and you can't force them. Like,
you can't force them.
They do a lot of Section 35s. They bring the folks before the court. And it's not a crime to have a mental health problem. So you can't criminalize it, nor should you.
But then if you do, you're taking that individual and putting them into the DOC, the Department of Corrections, which costs a tremendous amount of money to maintain that individual for a period of time. So ultimately, we're all going to have to pay for it.
Well, but to his credit, Sheriff Steve Tompkins offered his space because they're right there, not in the criminal, but to kind of help them to detox, and it was turned down.
Why?
Because they felt like it was penal. I'm like, no, they're not being arrested.
No. I mean, they're not being incarcerated.
Right.
They're not being actually locked up.
Right.
But they're using the resources that they have in their institution to. Why would that be?
I don't know, because because of this whole thing with ICE, he was no longer, because the feds used to pay the jail
exactly.
to you house people who were there with detainers, and since they were no longer doing that, he had this space that was freed up, and he said, "Hey, they're right here." They're stone's throw away from my jail.
And you're paying for the jail facility anyway. So to me, that's a possible solution. Those are the kind of creative ideas that I was talking about. You have to sit down and kind of think about, in a think tank kind of environment, how this is a problem. What are the solutions? Let's start throwing things against the wall and see what sticks.
Right. But it was turned down. He offered it multiple times. And I know he supported Mayor Wu.
See, that made me suspicious, though. That made me suspicious to the point where they don't want to solve the problem.
I think
why?
Right. I think also, will it work? Because folks, like I said, they don't seem to want to have that solution. Good morning, caller. Welcome to At the Round Table.
Well, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well.
Happy New Year, brother.
You know what they say when you speak of the Lord, he shows up.
No, then how did we get you?
Yeah, I kind of walked into that one, didn't I?
Good morning, Pastor Dan. Yeah, folks.
Oh, my goodness. I kind of walked right into that one.
He said, you got
well, okay, first blood. You have drawn first blood.
How are you, sir? It's been a while.
Yeah. Well, let's stick to where we're at right now,
let me give you first. Let me give you your proper introduction, folks. Pastor Dan Walker, heard every Wednesday here from 8 to 9 a.m. on Boston Praise Radio 102.9 and with Mom's Corner. So there you are, Dan. Good morning. Yeah, we were talking about the mayor, her first State of the City address, which is going to take place this Wednesday. And, we were talking about the areas where she had said she was going to clean up, Mass and Cass, the schools, the housing and the wealth gap. And I know you had tried down at Mass and Cass, so that's something so we're going to throw it to you as to your observations of Mass and Cass and any solution.
Well, there are solutions, but this is what happens when you have what would be considered a woke agenda without any concept of reality. It's easy, and I think the great doctor has already said it. It's easy to proclaim what you're going to do until you're handed the baton. When you're handed the baton, you've got to run, and you've got to run faster than everybody else. And while you were spending all that time critiquing everybody, saying that you could do it better, when you get the baton, you discover, oh my goodness, it's not a pound that I expected, it's actually 5 pounds, and blah, blah, blah. All the things that you truly didn't know, now you know, and you can understand if you want to.
Well, let me just throw this in there for a second, Dan. I'm probably interrupting you. So, and I think because you raised a very good point here, and I want to get you and Dr. Bradley weigh in. The mayor Wu was a member of the city council. She was the president of the city council. So that's a body that had prior knowledge. This isn't someone that was a private citizen or in some other type of government that didn't have firsthand knowledge of this problem. And there was very little effort from the council to help the mayor Walsh at the time address this issue. So I would say she had more of a head start with this problem than most.
And I would agree with you. But again, the issue is I can do it better because my philosophy behind it.
Well, I say I can do it better, but go ahead.
Yeah, I say I can do it better because my philosophy behind it is really the truth. It's these things become religions to people when you don't want to just look at the basic need of what's going on down there. And it may not be in terms of numbers. The people may not be out there when you can see them.
Dan, do me a favor here, sir. Do me a favor. Can you paint the picture for the folks who have not been down there?
Actually, before he does that, let me inject one thing. In all fairness to Mayor Wu, in her previous capacity as the president of the council, she might not have the depth of knowledge about that situation as the mayor had when he was in that capacity. Now that she's now in the mayor's capacity, she understands that, hey, listen, this is much more than what I thought. That could possibly, I'm just saying.
I won't give her as much as you because she was an at-large counselor.
Okay.
So she had the whole city.
Okay, but
she was the president of the council, so she set the agenda.
Okay.
She talked about this problem during her campaign quite extensively.
Exactly. But what my point here is though, talking about it and knowing the details of it might be two different things. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm saying so as we analyze it, let's look at it from both perspectives and be fair to her.
No, I'm being fair, but I think that because of her position, she should have been more.
I agree with that. I agree that she should have been more on top of it. I agree with that. She should have people around her that actually say, "Mr. Mayor, this is the reality." But what I'm saying here is sometimes when you grab that bottle, that bucket of water, you see that bucket of water, you look at it like, oh, it's not that heavy. But when you pick that bucket of water up, it's like, oh, this guy's gonna wait to it. And I think that's what she had encountered. I think that she would have known more about the schools though, because they are voting on the money. You see what I'm saying? They're voting on the money for it.
But they've had hearings on all of these these things,
Okay.
extensive hearings
Okay.
on all of these issues that we're talking about,
Okay.
and there was nothing done. And I know the city council doesn't have as much power, but they do have the power of the purse, right? And they did nothing. So, Dan, can you paint the picture for folks who are unfamiliar or just heard about Mass and Cass? Because I know
me
you
being one of them,
you
okay.
spent-
It's a really simple picture to paint.
Okay.
Imagine a whole street with side streets running off of it, where absolutely everybody on the street does anything and everything you do in private in public.
Wow.
What?
Okay.
Whatever it is you do in private, when you go into the bathroom and close the door, or when you go into your bedroom with your partner, whatever you do in public, in private, they're doing in public.
And
They're
even
eating in public. They're drinking in public. They're
injecting
sexing.
themselves.
Right.
Right.
They're drugging. Absolutely everything you do, including going to the bathroom in public. That's what Mass and Cass is about.
And Dan,
the fact that
I'll let you.
Yeah.
And the other piece to that is that, in some ways, you'll see blinking police lights or police officers driving by feeling helpless because the attitude is that you engaging these folks is wrong. That it's gotten out of hand, and it always comes back to now, what are the police going to do? Right?
And see, this is what I'm talking about when I talk about the quote-unquote woke agenda. The quote-unquote, the police are the enemy. This is what I'm talking about. This whole thing. Believe it or not, I believe that a former mayor could have solved this. I think Mayor Menino could have solved this. I think even the mayor before him could have solved this very easily. But they closed the island and as near as I can tell, every time I investigate that whole situation, it always comes out to, and I'm going to be polite when I say it because I don't want us to get fined, it always comes out to a male appendage measuring contest.
Okay.
Where somebody didn't like somebody else or somebody was determined to force somebody else. There doesn't seem to be any coherent reason why that island was closed that could not have been resolved except to prove a point. And
in all fairness, though, I know because I traveled there. There was some issues with some structural issues with that bridge that that takes them over there. Yeah. So there was a safety concern, but there was whether or not they wanted to spend that money for over there, because I think some developer has their eye on that, honestly, and I think the problem.
And that's what I'm talking. See, this is the other part. This is 2023. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
There's nothing we can't do. We submerged the highway underneath the main city. You can't fix a bridge.
Well, I think also to that point, all of this COVID money that has come in, and so there's got to be money that has come to the state that was unexpected that could have been allocated to.
Oh, absolutely. But like you said, there's a philosophy going on. Somebody's got a plan, and that plan doesn't include. It doesn't include you and I must confess. Every time I look at the city of Boston now, I'm even more depressed. I still don't know where the quote-unquote black neighborhoods are. I still don't know where the black economic power base is. I still don't know who the black leaders are in Boston. Where's Mel King when you need him? Where
and that's the thing is a lot of them are
he's
passed on or they're up there in age, right? But the other piece I think that ties into that, Dan, as we were talking about as well, was the schools. That was another issue, and again, there's another common factor is that you pulled law enforcement from a response that realistically is in their wheelhouse, right? They took the school police out of the buildings, and now the kids are running the buildings.
Yeah, they took the school police out of the building because of a philosophy that police equals bad.
Right.
And we indoctrinated a whole generation to understand, to think and believe that the police are bad. Snitches get stitches. It's wrong to try and have a clean neighborhood. I can have a drug house next to you and you can't say anything because of whatever reason. No. Well, these are philosophies that are wrong.
Well, they've turned into where a suspect now becomes a victim because of their behavior. I just don't get it. I mean, I get it, trying to work with people who have issues, trying to work with young people. We've been doing that for the longest time. But we all know, especially with kids, Dan, we were all kids. If my mom said to me, you can have what you want for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I would have had cereal all day long and sat in front of the TV. Right?
Captain Crunch, are you kidding me?
Right. So I would have no teeth. Right. So so what has happened, because I really call it this experiment and an opportunity, because I was saying they went searching for a solution to a problem that they did not have. Did we need tweaking? Here in Memley, we've always talked about racial disparities and things like that, and we need to address them. We didn't say we needed a wrecking ball. We were specific. Like a surgeon goes in there. You don't want him to just say, well, I wonder where this is. You want him to have all the research done and go in there specifically and target that area. You don't want him taking your leg off when the problem was in your arm. That's
right.
Go ahead.
And you're absolutely right. And then we stopped. First of all, we stopped parents from parenting. We stopped teachers from teaching.
Well, I'm gonna disagree with you when you say we stopped parents from parenting. What we did was we don't hold parents accountable, right? Because if they didn't stop parenting, because you can't stop what you haven't learned, right? In that we started celebrating.
Let me be clear as to what I mean when I said we stopped parents from parenting. We all grew up in the era where whether we thought the parent was right or wrong, the parent was always the parent.
Well, that's true, but let me just say, I guess let me give my point a little bit more, right? Is that folks get upset with me when I say, oh, I'm not going to a reveal party that a 17-year-old is having, because I don't see that as a celebration, right? That's about to have a baby, and we don't even know the father, and we know it's some other young person or whatever, that we know how this is going to turn out. That we used to kind of shun that in a sense, that we didn't applaud that type of behavior of people who we know aren't ready mentally,
for that type of responsibility,
financially, for that type of responsibility. That's the point I wanted to get in there, Dan. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And you're absolutely right. And see, as a pastor, I am now confronted with all of these new realities. What do you say to a teenager who is coming, who's coming to your church, is pregnant, no ends in sight, no nothing in sight? What do you do? And the other part of this is when it comes to the school, we stopped teaching what we know to be the truth because of an agenda, because of some concept of people trying to shift and change. Listen, taking the Boston police out of the schools.
But let me just jump in, because so folks are clear, because I think that's another misconception, Dan, is that the Boston police were never in the schools. Our role, that I currently am a member of the Boston Police School Unit, we never had a presence in the school. We were support for the school police, who were personnel of the Boston Public Schools. Right. That's why I said no. That's why I want to clear for people, because they keep saying that we wanted the police out of the school, and that somehow they felt like it was the Boston police who were patrolling the hallways in the schools. That was never the case. So
right.
Go ahead.
The idea that there is no ultimate authority in anything. There's no ultimate authority in the home. There's no ultimate authority in the church. There's no ultimate authority in the city. Mass and caste could not have existed 10 years ago. I don't care who was in office.
Right. And
it just would not have been able to exist.
And you're right, Dan, because we've always, I know, because my brother passed away from heroin overdose, that we've always had a problem, unfortunately, with people with drugs. But what we didn't have was allowing it to mask the way it has been, right? And we addressed it like back, and I'm not saying you have to criminalize it, but just being present where heroin was kept was arrestable. A lot of times these were deterrents, even for drug addicts, that you knew that if you stood out front of police officers and injected a needle in your arm, you were going to be removed.
Yes, you were going to go to jail. You were going to go somewhere, but you weren't going to be. And guess what? Mass and caste does not exist in Wellesley. Mass and caste does not exist in Framingham.
No will.
Mass and caste does not. So I'm just saying. Now, does Brockton have an area close to mass and caste? Yes, it does. But it's not. So it exists where it's allowed to exist. But organisms grow when they have things to feed off of.
But you're right on target, Dan. And Dr. Bradley, went you wait. Also, because when you bring up those analogies, Dan, I look at the school systems as well, right? In these communities, they may not be as large as Boston.
Well, Go on.
No, but I'm saying is like folks are saying, well, they're locking up black and brown kids here in the city of Boston, and I scratched my head. I said, well, 90% of the population in Boston public schools are black and brown. That's 90. That's just the numbers, right? Less than 10% are Caucasian, and out of that, most of them are in one of the exam schools. A few that can't get their kids out of the system. So, what are you? If that's the population that is committing the infractions, that's who you're probably going to be dealing with. We're not going in and dealing with kids who aren't have a problem, who aren't showing up on our radar.
Yeah, but see, I would argue that Wellesley and all these other affluent communities do not have the mask and cast problem, but they're contributing to it.
I would agree with that. Yes.
That's the,
absolutely.
So that's what
Absolutely. But then again, when you did prostitution sweeps, when the combat zone, which to me was a joke, but the combat zone was down there, who were the majority of the arrested people? Who were the majority of the people who were being victimized?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
they were not people from the area, because everybody down there knew if you were down there for two things: either you were down there to get taken, or you were down there to take.
Okay. So
that's the only. Go ahead.
So the solution might very well be is coming together with those communities that are making the contribution, because there's a reason why Wellesley doesn't have it, because of the affluence.
So what you're saying is that Boston should do like the governors of Texas and Florida and drop them off in their hosted community.
Hey, if it works, you know what I mean?
Right.
I mean,
share the wealth.
As a police, where you from? I'm from Wellesley. What's your address? You right back there. Let them deal with their own issue. Perhaps that might be a solution, or bring it to a point where they're faced with it, so they have no other alternative but to come to the table and start discussing how to resolve.
But we saw what happened when that happened, when they dropped all those all the newly illegalized immigrants up on down on Cape Cod. We saw exactly what happened. In 2 minutes, it was resolved, and they were shipped someplace else.
That's right.
Well,
come on.
I don't have a problem with that argument. I don't have a problem with it. What I'm trying to say, though, is that there's a reason why this situation has been allowed to exist in Boston, and why? Because Boston is the major city in the Commonwealth, the biggest in the region, but there's a reason why, and that reason, in my mind, is gentrification. Because with that gentrification, then economics, people with the money. Boston becomes like San Francisco and Wellesley. It becomes too expensive for certain people to live in, and then when they get here, that whole situation is just going to dissipate. It's going to go away. Right. So there's money is the reason.
No, you got to. We have a couple of minutes because Dan, I don't know if you guys that one of the charter schools wanted to build a school in Rosendale West, and they were like, no, we're not, and so they actually had to settle, and so they're going to be building it down in Mass and Cass. And I'm like, wait a minute, you all don't want, because they know that the problem sometimes that exists with these kids. They didn't want it in the community. This is up near where the mayor lives, and they pushed them out of there, right? And now they're going to build it down there. So I'm like, wait a minute, that would be a better neighborhood for kids to be in than Mass and Cass, but that's where they've been pushed to.
Yeah, but
the problem is, we don't want the situation to get better.
That's right.
The worse follow the money, the economics. The worse the situation becomes, the easier it is for me to come in with pennies on the dollar. Okay. What happened to the combat zone when the money came in? The combat zone was gone overnight.
So you can get
because the money came in, and when the money came in, the nonsense went out.
So you
end of story.
You can get rid of that situation. That's a very good comparison. You can get rid of that because you had all kinds of things happen in the combat zone. But when the money came in, the problem dissipated. And now when the money come into that area, I guarantee you, Mass and Cass and all the other side streets would not have this problem.
It's going to be gone.
This is all about justification, brother. This is really the case.
So the
we're still waiting for the critical mass. We haven't hit it yet. We're close, but we're still waiting because once the critical mass happens,
So
then
Dan, we've got about a minute. What do you expect from the mayor's State of the City address on Wednesday?
Much. I don't expect much.
I expect we're working on it. We're doing it. Just trust us. I expect our plans are working and our philosophies are true and proper. And don't give up the ship. We're going to change as we promised. I expect all of that, and nothing is going to change.
So, two things. How would you grade her? And the thing is, I mean, because they were able to resolve the problem in front of her house.
Yeah, how about that? Surprise, surprise.
So, what grade would you give her administration for her this?
I would give her administration right now a good, solid D.
D. Okay.
A D. It's not. I know. I was listening, and I know a lot of people gave it F. But when you come in every day and you are attempting to do something,
fair enough.
You have to get credit for your effort. The problem is what you're attempting to do is misguided.
I think they call that insanity, but we'll have to.
Well, I think it is insanity. Yeah. But at some point we have to discuss the real issue, which is something we're dancing all around, which is quote unquote 2 words: white flight.
All right.
Well, I will give her an I.
All right. Speaking of flight, we've got to run. Dan Walker from Sound Travels heard every Wednesday from 8 to 9 a.m. Dan, thank you for weighing in this morning. We appreciate it. And continue to listen. T. Michael Thomas from the People's Academy is going to come in, and he's a solution. Maybe he can put some of these folks to work down there. Get them trained up for a skill, a trade.
He has a good idea, but he
provide and help, offer something to the economy.
He has a good idea, but he's wrapped in the wrong package.
There we go. All right, folks, we're going to take our break, and we'll be right back.
That's the reality. He's wrapped in all.
Good morning, T-Mike.
This is for the dreamers. They say I am a dreamer, 'cause I still believe that anything is possible as long as you work hard. Hustle real hard, hustle real hard, hustle real hard, hustle. So if I never see ya, never get the chance to meet ya, no, I came up from the bottom, always rooting for the under.